Shalom, shalom. All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachak Quadash. Double honor to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elders of Great Millstone, who rule very well, very beautifully. Double salutations be unto the Akim out here pushing this gospel and truth and its sincerity to the best of their ability, given to them by Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Peace, blessings, and salutations be unto the elect scattered abroad. May the election of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Lord willing, fall upon your houses. Amen. We out here another week, right, through the grace and mercy of the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, right, through his only beloved begotten Son, Yahweh Shai, to continue to preach this gospel, this good news, and part of that good news, man, as I tend to mention, every street teaching, man, part of that good news, right, is that this wicked and adulterous, and evil ass place, man, America, right, is ultimately going to be destroyed. This is the same place, right, where wickedness, right, the epicenter of wickedness, as I call it, man, right? America is the epicenter, right, of wickedness, man. Matter of fact, let's go into that real quick. Because again, this is where you see all these different, immoral acts, taking place, right? Bestiality, right? Men ultimately sleeping with men trying to be women, women sleeping with women trying to be men, men going after kids, women going after kids, and so on and so forth. You see all that shit happening here, cannibalism, right? All that takes place here in America, man, and is ultimately pushed right into these other nations. Right. This is Amos chapter 9 and verse 8 says, behold, the eyes of the Lord Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, are upon the sinful kingdom. Right. And what is sin? Right. Sin is transgression of the law. Right. You go back to was that 1 John 3 and 4. Let's go ahead and grab it real quick. 1 John chapter 3 and verse 4. It says, whosoever committeth sin transgresseth also the law, for sin is the transgression of the law. So we understand that the Bible, right, which as a whole, right, has and consists of the laws, statutes, and commandments of the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, right, through his only beloved begotten Son, given unto the Israelites, right? And we understand that book, right, is the number one produced and number one sold book in the entire world. Right, so there's opportunity, right, for Esau Edom, because we know that Esau Edom, he is the one that's in control, right, pursuant to Job 9 and 24, right? The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. Also tells you in Daniel's, right, the second chapter, right, the Lord removeth kings and setteth up kings, so the Lord ultimately set this devil up, to rule, to have power, And Elder Apostle Remlov, earlier, today, right, he was going into his live stream, right? He was making mention of that, right? Just kind of lambacking off, the Elder Apostle Tahar's, video talking about how Saudi Arabia is not Esau Edom, or is not Edom, and, again, right, proving that Esau is the one that's in control. Esau is the one, that has current rulership as of now, and he's the one that's pushing wickedness. He's the one that's forwarding wickedness in the earth, which is what you see here, right? He has opportunity to forward the scriptures, right? As, the law of the land, if you will, right? But he doesn't, right? He is contrary to Yahweh Bashem El Shai. He's contrary to the scriptures, everything that he pushes, man. The scriptures tell you, right, not to, matter of fact, let's grab that, right? Deuteronomy chapter 22 and verse 5, it says, the woman, right? The woman shall not wear that which pertaineth unto a man, neither shall a man put on a woman's garment, for all that do so are an abomination unto the Lord thy power, right? The Lord Yahweh, Bashem El Shai, thy power. So this is talking about just clothing, right? What you're supposed to wear, right? There's clothing that ultimately pertains to women, right? You got dresses, longer skirts and so on and so forth, right? That whole attire, right? That pertains to women, right? But then you got clothing that pertains to men, right? Pants, shorts, right? t-shirts and so on and so forth, right? But see, in this society, right, it's as if man and woman can wear both sets of clothing, right? As if there's, really what Esau is doing is blurring the lines between man and woman, right? As if we're the same thing when we're not, right? And then he's come up with all these different freaking genders, and there's what did they say, 100 plus or 70, 80 plus genders, right? When there's not, there's only male and female, you know. Again, showing you, right, the wickedness of this devil, man. You know, it also tells you, I think it's in Leviticus the 19th chapter, if I'm not mistaken, it tells you, right, and speaks on, you know what, right here. This is Leviticus 19 and verse 20. It says, "And whosoever lieth carnally with a woman," it's lucky that's not it. That's not the one I wanted. All right, but it ultimately goes into, a man sleeping with, another man. Let me grab it real quick, man, because again, this is the same thing, right? That Esau, right here, Leviticus 18. All right, here, Leviticus 20 and verse 13. It says, "If a man also lie with mankind as he lieth with a woman, both of them have committed abomination. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood shall be upon them." So these are things that are, again, this is in the law, right? These are things that the Lord ultimately stated that these are the things that you're not supposed to do, right? And if Esau forwarded the Bible, if he forwarded the scriptures, you wouldn't see any of this. You wouldn't see a man, basically dressing like a woman, right? Which we call them transformers, right? They call them drags and all this other stuff, right? You wouldn't see any of that, right? You wouldn't see, a man laying down with another man and they put that and they forward those agendas, right? And they put them in these different TV shows, these kids TV shows and all the different movies. Like every TV show that you see, every movie that you see has to have, some type of, immoral scene in it, Again, further proof that Esau is contrary to Yahweh Bashem Yahshai, contrary to the law, statutes, and commandments, man, right? Which we know that is what? Sin, right? So this America is that sinful kingdom that we're reading about in Amos, the 9th chapter. It says the eyes of the Lord are upon the sinful kingdom. The Lord sees everything that's happening here. And this is why you're seeing Yahweh Bashem Yahshai starting to bring forth more judgment, people dying, via earthquakes or pestilences, right? Or flooding, right? You got a lot more judgment that's going out. Teeth of wild beast, and that's because of the wickedness that's being done here, right? Man, and you can sit here and tell people, like you can show people, right? Hey, that shit's not right. That shit's not okay. But the average person will sit there and tell you, oh no, it's just disgusting, that a woman will sleep with an animal, but yet, they're not against it, right? They're, oh, as long as it don't bother, as long as they don't come over here, or they don't bother me, or they don't say nothing to me, oh, I don't care. Hey, well, first and foremost, if you're not against the problem, then you're for the problem, man. Hey, because the Lord right now, he's looking for those who are going to rise up against the evildoers, man, and speak against this place, man, right? Starting with the prophets, the true prophets, Yahweh Shemel Shai, which we believe start with the elder apostles, the great millstone on down, and the great millstone affiliates that preach the truth, man. The Lord said that, man. Who will rise up? Right here. Psalms 94, verse 16, it says, "Who will rise up for me against the evildoers? Or who will stand up for me against the workers of iniquity?" And see, this is what we're doing, man. Right? We're standing up, right? We're preaching judgment, right? From Yahweh Bashem Shah onto this place, man. Because this place needs to be judged, right? It's fucking straight wickedness and evil here, man. And the Lord's going to do that, right? Via ICBM nuclear missiles, man, right? Right now, we understand that we're in the midst of World War III, right? World War III is popping off. Now you got Saudi Arabia helping America, right, to basically come after, Iran, You know, but hey, eventually all these nations are going to be against America, man. You know, we understand that America, America, right? Esau, Edom, just in general, right, has broken so many treaties, has consistently sat here and made promises and then broken those promises, man. You know, so why you don't see any of America's allies, as far as like the European countries, right, really helping to fight against, Iran, because at the end of the day, they're just done. They're fed up with America, man. You know, they're fed up with this bullshit, man. Because as the scriptures say, we'll grab it, that Babylon, right, had been a golden cup in the Lord's hand, right? Jeremiah 51 and verse 7, it says Babylon had been a golden cup in Yahweh Ba'Shem Shai's hand that made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunken of her wine, therefore the nations are mad. And again, these nations, right, have taken on, right, that same lifestyle, that same philosophy, right, which is that wine, right, into their own countries, man, following after Babylon, right? And now these nations are pissed off, right? Because, it really goes into them being bugged out, but now these nations are pissed off because of what? Because they're seeing that drinking that wine, right, it has fucked up their society. It has fucked up their own countries, because you got women, right, that like over there in the so-called Muslim countries, right, the so-called Middle East, countries and whatnot, right, you had something, they had, Sharia law, and they had, in a sense, right, they still had that order, right, where there it was the man and then the woman and then children, right. But see, as America continued to, make these nations, right, drink that wine and spread that philosophy, right, throughout these different countries, you're having more and more of their women, right, basically, coming up against that system that was established, man. Which that right there, that portion, right, that portion of their, how they run things, that's a good, right, because that's according to the divine order, if you will. Right, the divine order in 1 Corinthians the 11th chapter states that it goes the Most High, the Heavenly Father Yahweh, then it goes Yahweh Shai, then it goes man, and then it goes woman, and then it goes children. Right, and to a certain degree, right, you would have that in these so-called Middle East countries. But see, as again, as the America became more and more popular, and more, influence, right, started to spread across the world, and you had that dynamic, right, being destroyed. Right, completely being just dismantled and destroyed. You got women that'll come over here from the, from these so-called these Middle East countries. They'll come over here and they'll wild out, man. They'll get turned out. They'll, because see, that's the lifestyle. That's the philosophy that's being pushed, that a woman doesn't have to, ultimately, man her role, if you will, right? Not trying to be facetious, but she's not trying to be within, her a divine role, if you will, right? A woman being at home, taking care of the family, taking care of the kids, right? Making the dinners, so on and so forth, right? Cleaning the house, and that came, from Esau, Edom, right? And spreading that shit into the world, man. This shit's all fucked up, man. What does the scripture say? It's the place where wrong judgment proceedeth. Let me grab it, right? It's in right here, Habakkuk chapter 1 and verse 4. It says, therefore the law is slacked, and judgment doth never go forth. The wicked doth compass about the righteous, therefore wrong judgment proceedeth. Right? This play, and it also tells you in Job 20, right? Job 10 and 20. Matter of fact, we'll grab that real quick as well, right? Just kind of laying back, or to add, right? It says, really, and this again is speaking about America, right? Job 10 and 22, a land of darkness, right? As darkness itself, and of the shadow of death, without any order, and where the light is as darkness, man. So this is a place of confusion. This is a place, of wickedness and evil, right? No proper and right judgment is ultimately being pushed forth in America. right? Therefore, right, again, America having that influence over these nations, right, being that desired country by these people, and therefore wrong judgment proceedeth even in these other countries, man. You know, wickedness is forwarded in the earth, man. As you see, reading what is that? Second Esdras 15 verse 5. For wickedness hath exceedingly polluted the whole earth, and their hurtful works are fulfilled. And again, it starts right here in America, right? America again being that epicenter of wickedness in the earth. Right now, let's go back, right, and we'll finish that out. I just want to ultimately, build, right, on why America is going to be destroyed, man, right, and why it has to be destroyed. Right. And that was just a few points, right? There's many, many different points. I was actually, looking it up, not too long ago. I want to say like maybe a week and a half ago, I was looking it up, and I had seen an article, and which the reason why I looked it up is talking about extinct species. Well, just here in America, right, since America's inception, right, there's been over 100 different species of animals, right, insects, mammals, crustaceans, all these different, I think I actually looked it up, right? Animal extinctions in America. This is what I looked up on, Chat GPT, right? My question was, it says, since America's inception, how many species of animals have gone extinct, and what animals are they, and how was their extinction, and how has their extinction affected the ecosystem, right? It says, assuming by America, you mean the United States and its territories since the founding of the U.S. in 1776. The answer depends heavily on what you count as an extinction, right? The short answer, right? It says there's no official number, right? But then when you drop down, it says the most defensible answer is at least several dozen animal species and subspecies, and likely well over 100 if all documented U.S. animal extinctions, including fish, freshwater fish, mollusks, insects, birds, mammals, and island species are included. Over 100 since America's inception, man. Right? Showing you that Esau Edom, man, he's a fucking devil, man. The scriptures talk about the curse had devoured the whole earth. The curse had devoured the earth, and then it says the earth is destroyed and is destroyed in the inhabitants. As a matter of fact, we'll grab that, and then we'll go back to that, that Amos, right? This is Isaiah chapter 24 and just getting the point, right? Verse 5, it says, the earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof. See, Esau had done this by, putting chemicals and bullshit in the water, in the air, right? Spraying chemicals on the crops. And, I had seen another picture, an over hunting, right? Esau had, Esau's a hunter, right? You go back, to Genesis, right? The 25th, 26th, and 27th chapter, right? It kind of breaks down, Esau and Jacob, right? Jacob is a man that dwelt in tents, right? As you see Jake doing today, chilling, man, And then you got what? Esau, him being that hunter, a cunning hunter, Well, I seen a picture, and we're talking about damn near a fucking wall of bison heads. And it talks about, I think it was Esau went to go extinct, basically the I think it was bison or buffalo. I can't remember. I know it started with a B. It was one of those two. But basically extinct them, just so they can stop the so-called Native Americans, really the Gadites, the northern tribes, right, from being able to to live, right? Because we're talking about millions upon millions upon millions of buffalo. Man, I'd have to look that picture up, man. I could be wrong. It's bison or buffalo, It might have been bison, man, but used to roam America, all of America, man, bison everywhere, But then Esau came through and just started killing everything, man, And now instead of him, which he still overhunts, right? But now what he's doing is he does it by chemicals. He does it, by basically biochemical warfare, if you will, man, or chemical warfare, right? I'll read it again. Isaiah 24 verse 5, it says, the earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof. Because they have transgressed the laws, again, going back to him not forwarding the scriptures, but being contrary, right, to Yahweh Shem El Shah, man. You know, I don't know if you can really see me like that, man. I know it's a little dark, you know, making me look a little dark, even though I'm light skinned. Right? It says, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinances, broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore hath the curse devoured the earth, and they that dwell therein are desolate. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth are burned, and few men left therein. So again, right, Esau, you know, had destroyed everything, right? Even tells you in Revelations, right, the 6th chapter, the 4th verse, it tells you, and there went out another horse that was red. That red horse is talking about Esau Edom, right? And power was given to him, right, that sat there wanting to take peace from the earth. So Esau was, again, that king that was set up to rule. Daniel's the 2nd chapter. He setteth up kings and removeth kings, right? Right? It says, and power was given him that sat there wanting to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. And Esau's been using that sword, man. You know, Esau's been flexing that sword, flexing that power, you know, for 250 years, again, since America's inception, really longer than that. You know, Esau's been doing that. But just speaking about America, right? America, man, these America, Esau Edom, you know, has been flexing that sword, man. We see him doing it now, right? Over there with Iran, right? Ukraine now, you know, getting involved with, you know, with Iran, right? So you got America, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Ukraine basically coming at Iran. You know, what do you think that's going to do, right? That's going to invoke, you know, those nations who are allied with Iran to get involved, you know, which was what we're hoping, right? We're hoping that these nations ultimately, we're praying, right? We pray to Yahweh Shem El Shah that he speed this thing up and get those nations involved, which is prophesied to take place, right? It's prophesied that these nations, right, would ultimately get involved, you know? Matter of fact, let's jump into that. You know, because again, all this wickedness that he has pushed in the earth, he's about to get his recompense for that, right? America is about to be recompensed for the evil and wickedness that it has pushed into the earth, you know, and that recompense is going to be what? Destruction, straight up destruction, man, by ICBM nuclear missiles, right? Let's jump to Revelations, the 18th chapter, and right here. Well, you know, we'll start at verse 1. It says, and after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and the cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies, right? Because America, you know, has been, you know, this place of abundance, if you will, right? Everything is bought and sold here in America, right? From slaves to literally everything that you can think of, right? Tools for witchcraft, tools for, you know, all this other shit, you know, all different manner of incense and spices and clothing. America is the place of merchandise, if you will, right? And really, when you get into this 18th chapter, it goes into those things, right? We'll drop down and we'll read of it, right? It says, right here, verse 12, dropping down to verse 12, it says, the merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones, and of pearls and fine linen, and purple and silk and scarlet, and all thine wood, and all manner of vessels of ivory, and all manner vessels of precious wood, and of brass and iron and marble, and cinnamon and odors and ointments and frankincense and wine and oil and fine flour and wheat and beasts and sheep and horses and chariots and slaves and souls of men. So this right here is giving you, you know, a list of these things that is bought and sold here in America, you know, which is why these nations come over here, you know, and want to, you know, ultimately get in bed with America. And because, you know, they make money, right? You know, they you know, they're able to, you know, basically, you know, create these things, you know, in, you know, their country, right? For cheap labor, come over here, right, and sell it top dollar. People are gonna buy it, and now they're making, 2,000% on what they even created that. They might create it for $5, and then they're selling for 500. Over here in America, man. So these nations have ultimately got in bed with America and became rich. Drinking of that wine and again, right, taking on that same philosophy and lifestyle that America was pushing. But now, hey, these nations are looking at it like, hey, what the fuck is going on? Like, we drank of this wine. We trusted you. We believed in you. We poured our money and our time and our effort into you. And now you just backstabbing us, man. Right? Even America's allies. America's backstabbing its allies. America's foundation is starting to crumble. Right? Let's jump back up. Verse 4, it says that I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people. And this is what ultimately Yahweh Shai, is going to say, right, in that Paleo ancient Hebrew when he does come back, man. This is what is going to be spoken to the elect of the nation of Israel when he comes back, right? It says, come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins, that you receive not of her plagues, right? And that plague is going, again, those ICBM nuclear missiles. Let's grab that, right? Zechariah and 14 and verse 12, right? It says, and this shall be the plague wherewith the Lord Yahweh Bahashim Yahushua will smite all the people of Jerusalem. It's like, will smite all the people that have fought against Jerusalem. It's like a slip of the tongue, right? Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth, right? And that's, that's ultimately that fire. Right, that's that fire that's coming from those ICBM nuclear missiles. That's that radiation that the nuclear missiles are going to be spreading, right, as they hit. Right, when you look at radiation and what it does to the body, it'll have your flesh, melting off of you, man. It'll have your flesh melting. You'll get boils and rashes, and then your skin will start to and then your skin will start to fall off of you. That's what that encompasses, man. That fire with that radiation, right? And you can go and look up, Sarah Connor, from Terminator. You can look up Sarah Connor, right, in the nuclear blast, right? And you see all that, right? When that nuclear blast came through, hey, well, guess what, man? Her skin, her flesh, her veins, her muscles, all the way down to the bones. And even the bones were turned to ash afterwards, man. So this is what is coming, to America, aka Babylon the Great, right? And it tells you that it's going to happen in 1 hour, right? 1 hour. All these nations are going to come up against America, Babylon, See if we'll keep going on that, right? Right here, it says Revelations 18 verse 5. Right? It says, for her sins have reached unto heaven, and the Most High hath remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her double according to her works, in the cup which she hath filled to her double. How much she hath glorified herself and lived deliciously. Right? So much torment and sorrow give her. For she saith in her heart, I sit a queen and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Right? It says, therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire. For strong is the Lord Yahweh Bahashim Yahushua who judgeth her. Right? It's going to come by fire. Right? Again, those ICBM nuclear missiles, man. Let's grab this. This is Jeremiah 50 and verse 9. Right? Right here. You get to the point. Verse 9 says, for lo, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon, which we know of Babylon, right? In this case, in this sense, it's speaking about America. Right? It's speaking about America, right? AKA the virgin daughter of Babylon, AKA the mother of harlots. Right? It says, an assembly of great nations from the north country. That north country is speaking about Russia, right? Which again, right, when you look at Russia, right, their number one ally is Iran, right? The number one ally to Russia is Iran, right? We'll go ahead and we'll grab that, right? in Ezekiel, the 38th chapter. And, we'll drop down. I'll start at verse 3, right? It says, and say, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, by Hashem Shah, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, right? The chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, right? So speaking about that land that's over there, right? Where Russia is today, right? Which Esau ultimately, ended up taking over, right? And now we understand that there's Edomites that rule that area, which are the Russians today, right? So speaking about Russia, right? It says, verse 4, it says, now I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws. Right now, that right there is the Lord. When you throw hooks into something in their jaws and you pull it in the direction, right, you're basically in control, right? So the Lord's saying that He's going to basically control, Russia, right, and do what, right? And I will bring thee forth and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. So the Lord is ultimately going to put it on their mind, as we read in Proverbs 21:1, the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, and he turneth it whithersoever he will. So the Lord is saying, I'm going to put hooks into your jaws and turn you back, right, from this docile, post-Soviet era, post-USSR mindset, right, that you had against America, against China, right? You kind of chilled out, right? I think after 1990, Russia, China, the whole trio, died down. And what the Lord saying He's going to turn them back into that mindset, right? Ready to have, that hand over the button, ready to press the button, constantly using threats, right? Russia just used another nuclear capable missile, an ICBM, right? But it didn't have a nuclear warhead attached to it, right? It left a, what was that, 30, I think it was a 30-foot wide or 30-meter wide crater when the bomb hit. That's just that bomb. That wasn't even including, I think it was 30 meters. That wasn't, which is 90 feet. That doesn't even include, an actual nuclear warhead. That's without a nuclear warhead. That's big as fuck, So the Lord's saying He's gonna turn them back, and they're already doing that, right? They're already talking about, basically calling up, more of their troops, 300 to 400,000 more troops, right, to come up against Ukraine and to start, basically, getting into this war even more, right? I'll continue on, right, getting to the point, right? Ezekiel 38 verse 5, it says Persia, right? It says all of them handling shields and swords, right? And it says what? Verse 5, Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet. And when you go into these countries, right, we understand that Ethiopia, right, is over in the northern eastern part of Africa, right? You got Libya up there, right, in Africa, right? Showing you that these Hamite nations, right, a lot of these Hamite nations are going to be allied with Russia, right? And then you got what? Persia, right? Persia, right, which, its name was changed to Iran, right? Its name was changed to Iran. You got the Persian Gulf, which is what? Right next to Iran, right? Iran's name, was, they were called the Persians, but now they're called Iranians, right? Which is who? Ukraine is coming up against Iran. America's coming up against Iran. Saudi Arabia just got into the mix, helping America against Iran. And Israel was coming up against Iran. So you got Iran is being attacked on 4 different fronts, right? By 4 different countries. And you best believe that Russia is gonna get involved. I'll keep reading, right? Verse 6, Ezekiel 38, verse 6, right? It says, Gomer and all his bands, right? The house of Togarmah of the northern quarters, and all his bands and many people with thee, right? And when you go back into the geological location, right, of, Gomer and Togarmah, it's going from basically Armenia to Turkey, right? In that whole area, right? All that Georgia, Armenia, Turkey, in that whole area, that's what that Gomer and Togarmah, that's that area, man. So we're talking about these different nations that are in that area. They're going to be allied with Russia, and they're going to help Russia. It says, verse 7, it says, be thou prepared and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. So Russia is ultimately going to protect, right, its allies, man. Against who? Against those who wish to attack it. And we already know that, Russia has already made mention, right? As well as Iran. Iran just made mention of the same thing that Russia did when America, first put sanctions. I think it was a couple years ago, put sanctions, on Russia, right, and Russian oil. Well, you had a lot of the European countries, because 40% of their oil comes from Russia, right? They sat there and was like, hey, don't put sanctions on Russia because that's going to affect our economy. That's going to affect, us. And what happened? America did it anyways. America did it anyways, right? Put sanctions on Russia, right? Which again affected America's allies, man. Which is what you see now, right? America's decisions and the decisions that it's making is not in favor of its allies, right? And as it continues to attack Iran and the Strait of Hormuz continues to be closed, prices across the board for all, like the global economy, right, is being affected by America's decisions, right? And America's allies have to deal with that as well. And now you're telling me, or America is making the decision saying that these nations, right, have to increase their military spending. So not only are you attacking Iran and hindering the global market, now you're making them pay more, right, for their for security, if you will, to pay America more money so that way they can be secure. Hey, these nations are like, you know what, we're just going to abide by it, right? But these nations they're not participating with America like they used to, Really, you got a lot of, like, Canada recently said, recently stated that they're not really, cool with America like that. And they're right there, say that they're not even cool with America like that, let alone these nations that are across the seas, So a part of those, when going back, right, to that Jeremiah 50, when it talks about an assembly of great nations, it's not just going to be Russia, right, protecting, Iran and a few of its allies who ultimately get affected, because that's what's prophesied, as we just read. That's what's going to take place. But you're going to even have America's allies that are going to be a part of that number as well. Let's go to that in Revelations, man. Right, Revelations, what is that, 17 and verse 16, right? It says, and the 10 horns, right, which thou sawest upon the beast, which is going into these EU nations, right? That beast is going into, NATO, right? You have that woman that's riding upon that beast, which is America, right? That woman. Then you have the beast, which is going into, NATO, right? These NATO countries. And then you have the 10 horns going into the EU, right? It's overall, right? It says, in the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, right? And shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire, right? So they're gonna ultimately play a part in coming against America, right? Let's go to that as well as in Obadiah. I want to grab it in the NLT. Obadiah and verse 7. It said in the NLT, it says, all your allies will turn against you. They will help to chase you from your land. They will promise you peace while plotting to deceive and destroy you. Your trusted friends will set traps for you and you won't even know about it. So this is what's ultimately happening and taking place. Esau is, the Edomites here in America are the most proud, right? The most what is that word, man? They think they deserve, special treatment or whatnot. That's how these devils are, man. They feel special. They feel like they deserve, special treatment or whatnot, man. Hey, the Lord is finna kill all that. He finna tear all that down. That shit's done. That shit's done for, man. America's done for. The Lord is destroying this fucking place, man. Right? Economically, financially, socially. Right? The Lord is destroying it from the inside out. Which is how the Lord did, ancient Rome. Right? America is Rome 2.0. Well, let's go back into Jeremiah 50 and verse 9. right? It says, for lo, right, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon an assembly of great nations from the north country. Again, the north country being, Russia, right? We just read that you're going to have Russia's allies, right? Which you're even going to have North Korea, China, right? And China's allies, and then as well, you're going to have America's allies, right? You're going to have a lot of these NATO nations, right, that are going to come up against, America, these EU nations, right? The beast and the 10 horns, they're all going to come up against a Babylon, man, right? Which is where you're going to get, right? It talks about 200,000, right? Which is 200 million nuclear warheads, right? That are going to ultimately hit America, man. We believe that through faith, right? We believe, 200,000 or sorry, 200 million nuclear warheads. It could be 200 million megatons, but we believe that it's going to be 200 million nuclear warheads that are going to hit America, man. Either way, we believe that this place is going to be destroyed via, ICBM nuclear missiles, man, according to prophecy, right? It says, for lo, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon an assembly of great nations from the north country, and they shall set themselves in array against her. From thence she shall be taken. Their arrows shall be as of a mighty expertman. None shall return in vain. Which means, hey, they're going to shoot these nuclear missiles up, right? They're called arrows in the scriptures because you have to understand that these men, right, in the ancient times, they didn't have nuclear missiles, man. They didn't have cruiser missiles. They didn't have, the Patriot missiles. They didn't have the Oceanic or the Minuteman II missile. They didn't have none of these missiles, man. They had actual arrows, right? So when you look at a missile, it's got the point, right? And then it's got the wings on the back, right? The little feathers that, that you see on the back of an arrow, right? That help it, balance and guide, right? On the feathers on the back. You got those wings, if you will, on the back of an actual missile, right? So to them, it looks like an actual arrow. Right, this is the way that they described it, but this is not talking about an actual arrow, right? It's talking about those ICBM nuclear missiles, man. Scriptures talk about it, arrows being shot from the ends of the earth. How is an arrow going to be shot from one country to the next? It can't. It's impossible. It's talking about ICBM nuclear missiles. And what does it say? It says, and none shall return in vain. Meaning when they get shot off, hey, you best believe that they're going to hit where the Lord ultimately ordained them to hit, right? We go into that in Joel, the 2nd chapter, This is Joel chapter 2 and verse 1. It says, blow ye the trumpet in Zion, right? And sound an alarm in my holy mountain, right? Which is what we're doing right now. We're blowing that trumpet. We're sending out that warning, what is it? Uncertain sound. Let me grab this real quick, man. Right here. This is 1 Corinthians 14 and verse 8. It says, matter of fact, let me start up. Yeah, verse 6. Right here. This is 1 Corinthians 14 and verse 6. It says, now, brethren, if I come unto you speaking with tongues, what shall I profit? What shall I profit you? Except I shall speak to you either by revelation or by knowledge or by prophesying or by doctrine. And even things without life-giving sound, whether pipe or harp, except they give a distinction in the sounds, how shall it be known what is piped or harped? Right? Like there's certain noises that, certain instruments make, right? And that can make, like a trumpet, a trumpet can give, a loud or loud, I'm a high pitched noise or a medium pitch, right? Or you can, depending on how you blow it, right? And that will send off a certain message, right? Verse 8, it says, for if the trumpet give an uncertain sound, who shall prepare himself to the battle? Right? So again, there's, you can make different sounds with different instruments. Well, in this case, it's talking about, hey, if that trumpet, right, gives an uncertain sound, you're like, huh? You're gonna think like, what's going on? Like, and that's what we're doing through the Spirit, man. We're blowing that trumpet. We're giving out that warning, you know? And what are you supposed to do? Right? Prepare yourself for what's to come. You know, you Israelites, you so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, right? You need to ultimately be prepared for what's coming, man. You know, because destruction is coming, and it's going to come upon all of America. Right? America will be destroyed. Right? Straight up destroyed. Right? And we understand that the Lord Yahweh Shai, he's going to come and deliver the elect. Right? As the scriptures say, the elect shall scarcely be saved. So by, hey man, the last second, barely, right? The elect are going to make it, man. Well, how much more though? And we understand the elect are those who return to Yahweh Shem Shai and are trying their best in these times, man. Right? Before it's too late. Right? So how much more those who ain't doing shit? Right? What's going to happen to y'all, man? You're going to eat a missile, man. That's what's coming. You know? Because America will be destroyed. Right? Joel 2 and verse 1, it says, blow ye the trumpet in Zion and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai cometh, for it is nigh at hand. And again, it is. We're in the beginning of World War III. Right? The fullness of World War III, right, is going to be what? The use of those ICBM nuclear missiles, man. The destruction of America, right? Which we understand, right? There's order to prophecy, right? The next major prophecy to pop off, right, is Jacob's trouble, the hour of temptation, right? And the fullness of it is going to be when the mark, right, of the beast, the RFID microchip is going to be made mandatory. And then the fullness of World War III will be able to take place, man. Right? Once that chip is made mandatory, the ICBM nuclear missiles are man, we're talking about maybe days after, weeks after, you know? It's not going to be too far after, man, but it's going to be damn near immediately after, man. You know? But that's the order of it, right? Jacob's trouble, the hour of temptation, and then, right, the destruction of America, man, right? And the deliverance of the elect of the nation of Israel, right? And this is what we're telling you. It's all of that is right around the corner, right? It says, right, verse 2, it says, a day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness, as the morning spread upon the mountains. A great people and a strong, there hath not been ever the like, neither shall be any more after, even to the years of many generations. There's people just talking about those missiles, man. Stop talking about actual people. You know? It says, a fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth. The land is as the garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness. Yea, and nothing shall escape them. So meaning when America has got trees, it's got all this shit. That's cool. But when those missiles hit, boom, it's going to be desert. It's going to be destruction. Everything will be charred and turned to pitch. You know? It says, verse 4, it says, a fire devoureth before them. It's like verse 4. The appearance of them is as the appearance of horses, and as horsemen they shall run. Like the noise of chariots on the tops of mountains shall they leap, right? Like the noise of a flame of fire that devoureth the stubble, as a strong people set in battle array, right? So it says what, man? They shall, like the noise of chariots on the tops of mountains, they shall leap, right? So they're going to go from place to place, country to country. An actual arrow can't do that, right? Verse 6, before their face, the people shall be much pained. All faces shall gather blackness. People are going to be terrified, man. You know, the people are going to be fucking terrified. Once you start hearing those sirens, those missile sirens, right, start going off, and the people are going to be scared shitless, man, as they should be, right? It says, they shall run like mighty men. They shall climb the wall like men of war. They shall march everyone on his ways, and they shall not break their ranks, meaning they're not just going to veer off, right? You're not going to have some fucking hacker who's going to hack the missile, right? And it's going to have some type of brain where you can guide it and, all this other shit you see in the cartoons and shit. That ain't going to happen, right? It says they shall not break their ranks. It says neither shall one thrust another. They shall walk everyone in his path, and when they fall upon the sword, they shall not be wounded. I mean, you're not going to be able to shoot them down, right? You're not going to be able to shoot them down, man. It's not going to happen. It says they shall run to and fro in the city. They shall run upon the wall. They shall climb upon the houses. They shall enter in at the windows like a thief. The earth shall quake before them. The heavens shall tremble. The sun and the moon shall be dark, and the stars shall withdraw their shining, because you're going to have all that fucking smoke, man. Right? Like a mushroom cloud, man. It's going to cover everything, man. Like you see when you see those volcanoes explode, It'd be so thick and it'd be so, man, we're talking about the next country over. You know, is they're just, it's dark. It'll change the color of the sky because if the sun's up, right? It'll go from being bright and, you know, blue skies, whatnot. It'll be fucking orange, red, whatever color it is, or it just might be pitch fucking black because the smoke is so thick. You know, that's what it's talking about, right? It says, and verse 11, Joel 2 and 11, it says, and Yahweh, Ba'Hashem Yahushua, shall utter his voice before his army, for his camp is very great. For he is strong that executeth his word. For the day of Yahweh, Ba'Hashem Yahushua, is great and very terrible. And who can abide it, man? No one, right? You're not going to be able to survive when those nuclear missiles get shot off, right? It's not going to happen. You know, this is why we need Yahweh Ba'Hashem Yahushua. Right? Because America will be destroyed. We're reading it. It's prophecy. It's prophecy. And prophecy is going to happen. Prophecy is popping off the pages right now. Habakkuk 2 and 3. Right? At the end it shall speak and not lie. And it's speaking loud and clear, man. So what are you people going to do when those nuclear missiles get shot off? Where are you going to go? Right? The only place that you can go is up in the chariots, man. You know? That's the only place. And the elect are the ones that are going to be delivered, right? Let's go ahead and grab that, right? Matthew's 24th chapter. Matthew's 24 and I'll start at verse 29, right? This is words of Yahweh Shai, right? Red letter. It says, immediately after the tribulation of those days, shall the sun be darkened and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken, right? Meaning all these different celebrities and people that are in power, right? They're going to be taken out of power, man. These people are going to be fucking frightened. They're going to be scared, right? Missiles are going to be hidden. It says, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. So while all this fighting and everything's happening, right? Yahweh Shai going to come, right? Verse 31, right? And we already, have already gotten into it. Yahweh Shai is going to destroy these armies, man. You know, he's going to destroy these armies and take these nations out of power. You know, that Valley Yahweh Shaphat, Joel the 3rd chapter, right? Talks about that in the first few verses, right? Which we touched on that, I want to say, a few days ago, right? And at the same time, right, he's going to be coming to do two things, coming to destroy and to deliver. And we're reading the deliverance, right? Verse 31, it says, and he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. So Yahweh Shai is coming to deliver the elect. Verse, right? And this is what he's going to ultimately say, where we read in Revelation the 18th chapter, right? It says, come my people, right? And be not partakers out of her sins. Come out of her, my people, and be not partakers of her sins. Roughly paraphrased, right? Right? This is what Yahweh Shai is going to say in the Hebrew, right? This is Isaiah 26 and verse 20, right? This is to add to that, right? It says, "Come, my people, enter thou into thy chambers." Those chambers are going into those chariots, man. It's like a slip of the tongue, not nuclear missiles. It's talking about the chariots, right? Those chariots, the so-called UFOs, so-called spaceships. Yahweh Shai is going to have the elect gathered by those chariots, man, right? It says, "Come, my people, enter thou into thy chambers and shut thy doors about thee. Hide thyself, as it were, for a little moment, until the indignation be overpast." Right? The indignation goes into a righteous anger. See, the Lord is pissed off with this place. Hence the reason why this place is going to be destroyed. Right? And the Lord's going to do it again via ICBM nuclear missiles. And when Yahweh Shai comes, you're going to have the chariots, him and the chariots, right? The angels, right, are going to be sending out those laser beams, destroying this place as well as other places. Sending out those laser beams, man. America's going to be the place. America's going to be completely and utterly destroyed, right? Israel is as well. Is the land of Israel, and whoever's over there is going to be destroyed as well. But see, the difference between the two is Israel's going to be built back up, right? That's the Holy Land, right? That's where the kingdom is going to be built up. That's where it's going to be at. Really, the kingdom is just going to be everywhere, really. But the epicenter right? The main place of the kingdom is going to be over there in Jerusalem, you know, in Israel, you know. Right here, it says, I'll read verse 21. It says, for behold, Yahweh Ba'Shem El Shai cometh out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity. The earth also shall disclose her blood and shall no more cover her slain. That's right. Right? So this is what the Lord is going to do. He's going to destroy this place, man. You know? And the only ones that are going to be delivered are going to be the elect of the nation of Israel. You know? Let's grab that as well in Revelations. I think it's the 14th chapter. Or maybe Revelations 15. Yeah. This is Revelations 15. Verse 1. It says, I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, 7 angels having the 7 last plagues, for in them is filled up the wrath of the Most High. That's right, right? And I saw, as it were, a sea of glass mingled with fire, right? And this is ultimately going into, you know, John the Revelator, right, being on that chariot, right, above the, you know, either, you know, just inside or above the firmament, mainly, you know, above the firmament, right? Looking down, you know, through the bottom of that chariot, you know, watching America burn, right? As I saw, as it were, a sea of glass mingled with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast and over his image and over his mark and over the number of his name stand on the sea of glass having the harps of the Most High. So they were ultimately singing victory, right, over this place, man. Right? And I have a picture that kind of gives you sort of like a visual, if you will, right, of that. You know? And it's heavy, man. And you know, it really should it should give you, you know, it should be a you know, a faith booster, if you will. You know? See if you can see it. You most likely can't. Yeah, you can kind of see it. Right? There you go. You can kind of see it, right? The saints, right, standing and watching America burn. You know? This is what he saw. You know? And it's beautiful, you know, the you know, the Lord has had, you know, Esau, you know, ultimately create this AI, right? And you can, you know, you can see, you know, and create pictures like this, man. You know, that give you some type of visual, you know. But this is what's good. This is the elect, right? They're gonna be those ones that are standing up, you know, in that chariot, right, looking through that sea of glass, you know, watching America burn, watching this place burn, man. You know, being delivered, right? See, again, that's the elect, right, of the nation of Israel. The rest of you Israelites that are out here, right, that are continuing to follow in this devil's footsteps, man, you trying to, you know, you want to see this place survive. You want to continue to do your fucking drugs, and you want to continue to, you know, commit adultery, right? You want to continue to eat shrimp, crab, lobster, pork. You want to continue, you know, to just do abominable shit. And the Lord is going to destroy you with this place, man. Right? We understand that Zechariah chapter 13 and verse 8, it tells you what? It says, and it shall come to pass that in all the land, right? It's talking about America. That land is talking about America, right? Saith the Lord Yahweh Ba'Shem El Shai, 2 parts therein shall be cut off and die, right? I mean, you're going to be destroyed here in this place, man, right? But the third shall be left therein. That's right. It says, then I will bring the third part through the fire, and will refine them as silver is refined, and will try them as gold is tried. They shall call on my name, and I will hear them, and I will say it is my people, and they shall say, the Lord Yahweh Ba'Shem El Shai is my power. And they're the ones that are going to be delivered. 2/3 of our people are going to be destroyed, man. You know? 2/3 of the nation of Israel here in America will be destroyed. You so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans will be destroyed. As well as you're going to have other, you know, wicked Israelites outside of America, right? They're going to perish as well, right? But majority of the Israelites are here in America, man. You know? A vast majority of those Israelites that are going to be destroyed are going to be here in America, man. You know? Hence the reason why the Lord had it to where there was an influx of, you know, migrants coming to America and all this other shit, man, wanting to be here. The Lord was getting them here so that way they can be destroyed in this place, man. You know, that's what the Lord has prophesied to take place, man. Now, you know, I'll jump to that 2 Peter 3 and 9, and we'll start to close out. I'll start at verse 6. 2 Peter 3 and 6. It says, whereby the world that then was being overflowed with water perished, right? Going back in the time of Noah, right? The Lord had already destroyed the world, for wickedness, man. Hey, but he made a promise, right? Via the rainbow, right? That he won't destroy the world via, water anymore, right? Verse 7 says, but the heavens and the earth, which are now by the same word, are kept in store, reserved unto fire against the day of judgment and perdition of ungodly men. Right? So the Lord never said that he wasn't going to, ultimately send that fire. Right? It says, but beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. The Lord is not slack concerning his promise, as some men count slackness, but is long suffering to usward, that it says, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. And see, this is what we're preaching, repentance, right? To turn away from the ways of this world, as you read in Romans the 12th chapter, be not conformed to the world, right? The image of the world, but be conformed and renewed right through the spirit of your mind, and be conformed to the image of Yahweh Shai. Follow after righteousness, man. That's what we're preaching, man. Repentance, right? We know what's coming via the scriptures. We know what the Lord has ultimately, set in store for this place. And the Lord has risen up men to go and to warn you. And it's really, the Lord is making it, you better take heed or you die. That's the bottom line, man. There is no ifs, ands, or buts, right? Verse 10 is, but the day of the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem El-Shah will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with a fervent heat. The earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. So the Lord finna destroy this place, man. Everything that you see here, man. Everything that you see here, the Lord's finna destroy it. Verse 11, seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, and what manner of person are you to be in all holy conversation and godliness, right? Where's your mindset at? Stuck in the world? Hey, well, guess what? You're going to perish with this world, man. It says, looking for and hasting unto the coming of the day of the Most High, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Nevertheless, we, meaning the elect, right? Lord, we have that number, right? Nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for new heavens and a new earth wherein dwelleth righteousness, right? And we see that this world is being ran by the wicked, right? Therefore, wickedness, right, is being forwarded in the earth. And we done with that shit, man. We see where it's gotten us. We see where it's, where it's leading to, and we done. We ready for the next phase, We're ready for the next phase, man. If you stuck in this world, you stuck on, on the things of this world, man, you're going to perish with this world, man. And that's just the bottom line, man. But that's it, man. Lord wills, edifying, Lord, straight to the point. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rachak Kodash. Again, double honor to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elders of the great millstone. Till next time, shalom.